Heyo. How's it
Yeah,
going, Amanda?
I'm good. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing great.
I kind of surprised myself when I hit live. I was like, "Oh, wait, this is fine, right? We're good." There's a couple second delay. We're all set. All right. Um, so we have a very special segment today. Um, I'd love to learn more about you, Paul, but I think it starts with a yo-yo.
So I've been one of the things we're talking about with work. I a big thing is like getting space in my life and injecting play and creativity. So this is one of the things I've been doing over the last year. I've never done this on camera, so this is pretty high pressure.
This is amazing.
First yo-yo segment on Amanda's show before she becomes famous. So this is an unresponsive yo-yo. It means if you pull it, it won't come up. Um, but also means you can spend more time doing tricks. Up. And we can do this.
This is amazing.
This is
What?
called the Mach 5.
What? Oh my goodness.
Oh, there we go.
I love that. That was amazing. That was well, we can't follow that up with any other yo-yo segments ever again. That's incredible.
So, um, yeah, maybe it'll tie into some of the things we're talking about, but YouTube learning and hired an online coach. It's amazing what you can do these days.
Um so you've been learning how to yo-yo over the past year? This is a new skill?
I so I got involved in the yo-yo fad in the 90s when every kid across America and apparently the world was doing yo-yo. And I probably didn't pick it up till last year. Saw one. Nice. Somebody's commenting on the yo-yo skills, but yeah,
I
my
bet.
last year I was like, how do we inject more of that like inner child playfulness into my life? I just started like doing all the things I did as a kid: tennis, basketball, yo-yo, and yeah, it's been fun.
That's amazing. Well, everyone, welcome. This is the menu with Amanda Natividad. The menu, why do we call it this? Because you have a fun list of options. And today on that menu is yo-yo tricks. Uh, my guest today is he's a recovering business consultant turned writer. And these days I don't know, I think he's full-time hacking a living. He is the author of a new book called The Pathless Path. Please welcome my friend, Paul Millard.
I'm so pumped to be here. I think you're injecting such amazing energy into everything you're doing, and I think this is going to be a huge show.
Thank you. It's so fun to have you. I'm super excited because you have had, well, your career started out very traditionally, right? Like went to a great college, went down the path of consulting, ultimately realized that was not what you wanted to do at all, and then you've been carving your own path and just finding your own way through, which I don't know. That's something that really resonates with me because I've had streaks of traditional career paths too, um, and have just had a lot of pivots along the way. So I think we're kindred spirits in that sense, right? We're finding our own ways through and just having fun with life, yo-yoing around.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I desperately wanted to like break into like successful career paths when I was in college. I went to University of Connecticut, which is a public school, and like I would talk to these companies I was interested in. They would say, "Oh, you went to the wrong school. You can't really work here. People like you don't really get options to work here. Maybe if you go to a good grad school, you can work at these schools." So I just like tried a ton to break in. Ended up getting lucky breaking into one of the strategy consulting firms and actually did really like it. I loved the core work. I still
Mhm.
do some of it. Um, but over time, as like it just became more about like promotions and continuing on this never ending path, I think my curiosity started taking a hit, my energy started taking a hit, and kind of walked away without really knowing what I was doing. And then the past 5 years, I've just been trying to piece together uh, my own story, which has also resulted in me writing a book about that journey as well.
Yeah. So in that previous life, what was the moment where I think anyone who experiences or who takes control over a career pivot, everyone has that moment of, "Oh, shoot, I don't wanna be here. I don't wanna do this." That whatever it is, it could be a really mundane thing or like an actually kind of traumatic type of event. What was that moment for you where you realize, "I do not wanna be living this life right now?"
So I think this is an interesting question because it's a question that we're kind of trained to have a default response to. And I could tell you something. But in writing my book, I discovered there wasn't really a moment. And like digging into other people's stories, what I found is it's often like years of kind of like fumbling around, starts, missteps, attempts at things, meeting different people. And then there is like the moment when I decided to quit, but it was very like in the moment, it didn't seem important at all. Like it was at the bottom of an email of me being frustrated with work. But if I step back and look back, it's like it's so obvious I was going to leave, but in the moment, it didn't feel important. It didn't feel like it was that consequential. And in a sense, that was almost like the moment I would say is the most important is really like the final step of like years of contemplating questions that were seated in my mind, experiments I was doing, and then finally the leap is kind of the last step. And that's kind of what I talk about in my book, just showing the more you dig into people's stories, you see that over and over again.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think as I was asking that, I was also thinking about if I had a similar or if I had a moment of, "Oh, I don't wanna be here."
Yeah.
Um, and when I say that, I mean, like, I guess for context for the viewers, like, I was a journalist, became a kind of conventional, I'll say, tech worker, worked in a normal office job, normal 9 to 5 job for years, um, and in the recent couple years have just kind of found my way into, continuing to do marketing, but in less traditional ways or in less traditional environments, and, I think I'm very lucky to be able to say that the pandemic and stay-at-home orders had helped to enable a lot of that because every knowledge worker, right, was working from home. So, thinking about, like, was there a moment? I mean, I can say that there's a reflexive sort of triggering moment of like, "Oh, wait, I actually don't want this,"
Yeah.
versus like a current trauma that's like, "I can't be here anymore." And it was, a while back, I was starting in this new job, a pretty traditional office job, but just happened to be at home and was going through the normal like orientation just remotely. And it was back-to-back meetings. I think I had counted, like, how many meetings I had. I think in the first 2 weeks, I had 30 or 40 meetings in, 8 to 10 business days. Um, and I think that, like, the thought of it, like, just seeing my calendar made me physically sick. Where I was like, "I
Yeah.
can't do this." But
And I
yeah.
think the other side of that is you probably, I'm just guessing here, you probably had either met some people, had been reading people, had been inspired by people who had dabbled with creative experiments before that, such that it had given you a window to say like other options actually are possible. Because a lot of people will say, I don't want all these meetings, but they don't have that imagination of like that something else is possible. And that's often the things that what I'm talking about that are like building up before the moment. Did you
Oh
have those?
gosh. Yeah. I didn't think about that, but you're exactly right. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head there. Like, that's exactly why. If I had I not imagined or known a different potential way to work, I think I would have just thought like, "Oh, I'm tired from all these meetings," and
Right.
then not have really thought about it harder, just would have shrugged it off and been like, "I guess I'm just tired, need a break."
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the central fascination. I've been obsessed with trying to understand my own journey, how this
Yeah.
really happened, because I sensed that the stories people were telling were nonsense. and just laced, or not nonsense, but too simple.
Mhm.
And that if I could like pull out the essence of what it's really like people could be like, oh, that's me. That's where I am along this phase. And
Yeah.
I, I have this chapter. It's called "Wonder Tips the Scales," and it's really a lot of people are uncomfortable in their jobs, but that's a certain discomfort. They know
Mhm.
exactly how, like the meetings, what I do. I have a coping mechanism, and you can do that indefinitely as long as you have good coping mechanisms. However, what tips the scales for people is wonder. They have this idea that like something could be better, something could be different. There is a different way. And like that starts creeping in and like almost starts taking over your life because you start looking for evidence and you're like, oh my God, this person's doing this person's doing that, that person. And it starts flooding you. And then at some point, people have enough evidence that are like, okay, I think I could pull this off if I make a shift.
Yeah. Let's dig into this more. This is I have my little agenda here. Um, so let's talk about this escape from work.
Yeah.
This is something that, you and I have talked about a little bit. We've kind of been saving it for today, but just this notion of people feeling like they want to escape from work, so they plan aggressively for retirement, right? Like maybe like the FIRE movement, right? The financially independent, retire early. I think that's what it stands for. Um, and this whole movement is right very much focused on saving as much money as possible, so that you can retire early and be financially independent. Um, what do you think about this whole escape from work?
So I think fire is useful in
Mhm,
that it's an alternative to kind of just going through the motions and the inertia of the path, the obvious paths that are in front of us that most of the people around us are following, right? So this fire script says there's a way out, right? So this does tap into that wonder and possibility, right?
mhm,
But in my journey, what I realized, and I didn't discover fire until after I left my job, and I didn't reach any sort of fire number, so I had to keep making money. Um, what I discovered is that it's really based on a narrow conception of work as a full time job for a salary, right? And when I've lived around the world as a digital nomad, I've discovered people that have literally escaped work. But almost 0% of people actually want to just chill on the beach.
mhm.
So people will say this all the time. I just wish I could quit my job and live on the beach in Mexico. In reality, when given that option, people don't even take it. And so why? Why don't people take it? I think what I've landed on is people ultimately just want to be useful. They want to contribute. They want to be part of things, and they want to connect with themselves and the world. So
Yeah,
that broader conception of work is like what can help people think about what they actually want from their life. And like maybe a paid segment of work is part of that, or a full time job in some limited capacity. But like broadening the sphere of work, I think, is what most of the sophisticated people embracing fire eventually land on. The thing is, like, I think you can skip fire and or there's a version of fire called coast fire, which is basically like build some savings and then just quit and try to cover your cost of living every year, which is
yeah,
more or less what I've done. I've like in my first few years, I made like 30 grand, 20 grand, 35 grand. All my numbers are posted. I can link to them, but and yeah, I was just covering my cost of living. And what I was doing is investing and finding out things I want to keep doing. So for me, that's the real work of your life is finding the things you want to keep doing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it really people need meaning and connection, purpose. I think when people are saying, "I just want to live on a beach," or like, "I just want to be on a beach and do nothing." I mean, when I hear that, I think you want a vacation. Fair. We everyone should take breaks. Everyone should be able to unwind and be on the beach for a couple weeks or whatever. But what I'm also hearing is or what I think, and they're not saying, is that they want a deeper meaning in what they're doing, and whatever that meaning is, right? It's personal to everybody. It just needs to be the reason you work. It needs to be your reason, is all.
Right.
Yeah.
And people's expectations of work have increased dramatically. This is very recent. Like this idea that like work would be meaningful is a pretty new idea. um the idea that like work is could be your calling was very common. It's a religious idea from the Protestant Reformation, but it was typically paired with this more like thrift, prudence, self-restraint ideals. Now there's this idea that like I want my work to be meaningful, but the problem is a lot of that can be wishful thinking when we're only looking at what we can do within a job context. The amount of things we can do in a job context are pretty narrow. And I think it's too narrow of a lens to like solve that meaning question. So I think a lot of people are becoming disappointed. They keep searching for the next job. This is what I did. Like I was like,
Mhm.
once I get my dream job, I'm going to be so happy.
Yeah.
um, I don't think I gave up on that. And that's how I actually found meaning from the things I do.
So, in your saying that finding meaning in work is relatively new, that's one of those things that I don't inherently know a lot about, but immediately agree, where I'm like, "Oh, that makes sense to me." Do you think there's what do you think sparked that? Like, do you think there's some kind of recent historical event, or why do we care about meaning in our work now?
So I think you have to decouple what actually drives meaning in
Mhm.
work. So there's this great paper from MIT Sloan Management Review where they looked at what actually drives meaning. What they found was that it was often associated with like painful, stressful, hard, challenging events in work. When you had to like power through things, you had to overcome a crisis, you had to overcome um, difficult things and grow, right? That's almost like universally what people said. It often was upon reflection that they realized it was meaningful. They were often like poignant, specific activities or moments or projects. Um, but people don't interrogate this and they think they kind of pair meaningful work. Like I did a scan of 100 career posts or career pages on the internet, and all of them are like, land your dream job, do the best work of your life. Like, they're pairing this idea that like almost this like eternal pleasure state that one doesn't drive meaning, and two is like the Facebook's career motto is like do the most meaningful work of your life. Like if you go work at Facebook, I guarantee you will not they will not deliver on that. So it's really this mismatch of like what we think we're aiming for and what we're really aiming for. Um, yeah, and I don't know what drove that. I think the tech industry definitely accelerated that. Like I
Mhm.
was graduating in '07 and I read Google debuting on the number one best company to work for. It's like catered lunch and yoga pods. It's like, what is this? This sounds amazing. And
Yeah.
like slowly, every career page went from like apply here, look at job descriptions, email recruiter to basically like culture PR.
Yeah.
Like you can become your fullest self at Ropes and Gray, a law firm. What? Probably not. Like,
Probably not. I don't think so. Yeah.
yeah, and so I think a lot of my journey is just like applying a much more like lightness to like what we see as like full-time work,
Yeah.
and almost reverting to previous generations where they didn't expect as much. Or
Yeah.
just like let's be a little more realistic about what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Um, all right, this dovetails nicely into our next segment. We have a segment today. It's not about food,
We need
but
music intro.
I know I was looking at how to do this in the streaming platform, like how to have transition music. I don't think you can. It's okay. Next I'll get a guest sometime who can sing, and then unless you can sing, and then we'll have a transition.
Nobody
um,
wants to hear me sing.
so our next segment, this is things that we believe about careers that most people don't believe, or the things that we maybe counterintuitively have come to realize. So things you believe about careers that most people don't believe now. Paul, do you want to
Got
go
it. So
first?
Yeah. Do you have some too?
I do, yeah. So we can
Oh,
take turns.
great. Yeah, so this kind of goes against what you were saying before, is like you think people want a vacation. Um, I think the best career move somebody who's driven can do is taking at least 1 month off from work mode sometime between the age of 27 and 35.
Why 27 and 35?
Well, I think there is value in just like tapping into the natural like ambitiousness and like naiveness of youth, of like just go work hard on stuff.
Yeah.
Also, your brain's not done developing till you're 25, 26, and you kind of get a little more reflective. Um,
Mm.
Maybe during the break, you'll want to party less too at that age. Um,
Oh.
so, um,
Look at
yeah,
you
and
explaining the quarter life crisis in a more, like, contextual way.
I'm a huge nerd, so that's why I had to
Yeah,
write a book. I had like too many thoughts.
that's interesting. Because I had my quarter life crisis when I was around 25, and that was when I transitioned from journalism to food, um, for about how long was it? 8 to 10 months. I didn't work, like, I didn't have a job. I was, finishing up culinary school. I was interning at the Los Angeles Times test kitchen, picking up freelance work here and there, and just working on, like, little side projects that were just purely for fun. Um, but, like, I had saved up money to be able to do
Yeah.
this and lived on a very strict budget, and for a whole year, I didn't buy anything that was not essential. Like, I didn't.
This
Yeah.
this is so common.
Yeah.
Um, because people will just start with like, well, that you can't just say that. You can't just take time off from work. What happens is you just prioritize. Like people accomplish amazing things in life. Most people are like, I want a home no matter what. And they'll make that happen. If you
Mhm.
had the same attention to like, I need to take a month off or longer, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
And same thing happened to me is I basically just started living super cheap again at age
Yeah.
32, even though I'm like supposed to be having a nice apartment and like supposed to be
Yeah.
like eating at nice restaurants. Like I just didn't do any of that.
But you probably loved it, right?
That was the crazy thing. I think I got in touch with like what I really desired.
Yeah.
And it really surprised me because the gap between what I thought I should want and like my happiness was like, oh, I don't have to want those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, like I said, I didn't shop extra stuff for a whole year, but it didn't feel like a sacrifice because it was just the thing that I prioritized. I prioritized not trying to figure out my path and what kind of work I wanted to do next, and being so focused on that and focused on honing the skill of cooking was fulfilling enough that even though I was living on this budget of like $1,000 a month, it didn't, and living in Los Angeles, it just didn't feel like a sacrifice. It was I was happy. Like some of my happiest moments around that time frame were, in culinary school, after class, sitting in the bed of a truck with my classmates and drinking the Armagnac in plastic cups that we stole. Like
That's awesome.
like
Yeah, I
those
think
things that were not expensive, right? It was just like an experience, but it was an experience that was, I don't know, pure.
so. I'll edit it 27 to 35, unless you're Amanda, who's a little more enlightened at a younger age. But all right, what's yours?
Okay,
Flavio's loving the segment.
yay, Flavio. All right. The one I have is working really, really hard is good. Maybe not always, right? So here's what I'm saying. So I think, maybe as kids, we are brought up to learn working really hard
Yeah,
is good. Like you should work your hardest, your best. But then sometimes something happens, like around college or post college, then you're told the opposite of like, work life balance, like, don't work too
right.
hard, don't let your employer exploit you, and these are all things that I agree with in flavors of it, right? Like, I believe, like, yeah, don't get exploited, of course, and I believe in figuring out what work life balance means to you, but for the people who are saying, like, "No, no, don't work harder than you need to," I'm gonna gently push back and say, I think sometimes it's really healthy to work really hard. Like, sometimes even now that I'm older, right? Um, Sometimes I'm really happy when I reach that state of flow and I'm working really hard
Oh
on
yeah.
something for like 4 hours straight and I look up and I'm like, "What time is it?" Like, that I think can be really fulfilling. That makes me happy. Do I wanna do that every single day without any breaks? No. But I think if you can figure out how to find ways to work in sprints, where maybe you're working really, really hard and maybe 1 week is like a 60-hour work week because you have a deadline, but maybe the next week is a lot lighter, right? And you're kinda just, like, doing some admin tasks and checking out early. And I think a lot of knowledge workers can do that. I don't think you have to be a freelancer to enjoy that. Um, I just think it's healthy. I think working really hard at times helps you hone skills, helps you focus, helps you get really good at something. And then taking breaks is healthy.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think I agree. I
Hmm.
think I disagree. Well, I don't disagree. I think um, it's interesting when you say like people should work hard. It triggers these moral judgments about like people's duties and their obligations to
Mhm,
society, and like people get so angry. And those that anger has nothing to do with what you're talking about. I think
mhm,
I didn't appreciate this until I worked on my own. I don't care how much I work now, because I'm kind of like deciding what my trade offs are and what my commitments are and what I'm getting out of it. I think I really did try to like underwork when I was in consulting because ultimately I didn't realize I didn't connect to the work and I didn't think it mattered. So like I might like add nuance, which is like don't work hard on stuff for too long that you
mhm.
don't care about. And I try to reframe people around design for liking work and then go all in. And that's kind of what I did on my book. And I was working like a maniac, but it was so fun. Like I
Yeah,
freaking loved it. Like my wife was commenting to me. She's like, "I see you working like so hard, but you're not like getting tired or exhausted. It's really cool to see."
yeah, yeah.
I love
I
that.
love that. All right. What's your next one?
All right. Uh I think optimism and overcoming cynicism is probably one of the most valuable skills you can develop or work on in
Hmm,
today's world, above almost any other technical skill or ability. Um, because I think it's this force multiplier of opportunity in today's world. It's so easy to connect with people and send out kind of like energy, especially virtually, that anytime you're falling into a cynicism or pessimism mode, all you're really doing is destroying potential opportunities or connections. And I think when you are an optimistic, hopeful, excited person, you start seeing like things just kind of happen and it's hard to explain. So, yeah, I think that is one of the most useful thing. Pessimism is one of the most important things to guard against falling into, and optimism is probably one of the most important things you can develop.
I love this. I've never thought about this. I genuinely love this take. And it's so true. And I think, I'm gonna add to it more. Like, I think when you can reframe your mind to focus on the optimism, I think that alone can help you overcome a lot of personal roadblocks. Like, when you have the thoughts of, "I wish I could do this thing, but I don't know how to do that," or, "I can't learn that. I'm not smart enough
Right.
for that stuff." I think if you can retrain yourself to believe like, "Okay, I haven't learned this thing yet. I haven't learned this skill yet, but I believe that if I find the right course or the right materials that I can learn this thing and I can do it." Um, it's now, of course, easier said than done, right? We all have
Yeah.
certain traumas and things we need to overcome, but I think the pessimism versus optimism shift is important for everybody as an
Yeah.
individual.
And I think it doesn't happen up here very easily. Like I
Mhm.
think this is where like things like this have helped me.
Yeah.
like just like doing this in the middle of the day and laughing at myself and like loosening up, especially like getting in the body, like
Mhm.
that's the kind of stuff that like just brings you back to that childhood energy again.
Yeah. For me, it's this show. I mean, it's still new, but, sometimes
Yeah. The
sometimes when I'm
optimism
the
show. We should
optimism
call it.
show. I mean, sometimes there are the moments of, like, when I'm setting up the links, right, and making sure it's porting over to YouTube, like, the technical stuff like that,
Yeah,
or that's not fun, right? But it's when once we hit live and we're talking and we're jamming on ideas, these are the moments that I'm like, "This is so much fun, and I'm so happy that I'm doing this show."
that's awesome. I love it.
I think this is a really high note to end on. Where can the people find you, Paul? And where can people find your book? Plug the book first.
Right here.
All right.
If you live in Austin, I will bike a copy to you and have a conversation with you about the book for free. Um, that's an open offer to anyone in Austin, or I will send them to you as a gift if you want. Really, I want to help people make sense of weird paths, having all sorts of curiosities and wanting to find a deeper relationship with work. Um, Twitter, P_Millard, or I don't know. I think this is streaming to all my platforms. Oh, damn. Look at that.
Got you.
Right there. Over there. Follow me. Follow, like, click, subscribe. Let's throw a subscribe to Amanda right
Oh,
here. Just
yeah. I don't know how to do that.
I think it's over here.
Somewhere, yeah.
Or think-boundless.com. But yeah,
Love it. Thank you so much for being here, Paul. Thanks for chatting with me. This was so much fun. Good luck with the book and everything. And everyone, check out the book, read it, buy it. Ask Paul if you move to Austin and ask Paul to bike it to you.
I will. I will bike it. It's a big city, though. I don't know if I can bike it all the way, but I'll do my best.
All right. Bye, friends.